Hello there, and welcome back to what is already our second set of sessions during Big Data Days 2022. And today I have a pleasure to introduce a very special person that I've been knowing for at least 3 to 4 years right now. And it's a very great pleasure to welcome Eric Nguyen back, who is going to be talking about how to use data for post-COVID recovery. Let's hear a little bit around Eric. Eric is currently a senior manager at the Synergy Group in Australia, and he has delivered values to business operations through his duties as business lead and a developer across various skills. He has experience in the telco industry, services, project management, IT consulting, and also knows a thing or two around automation. Besides his role at Synergy, Eric is also a judge for the AI Journal Global Excellence Annual Awards, which is going to be delivered in a couple of months. Eric is going to be presenting from Australia today, so he's getting towards his end of the day, whereas Big Data Days today is only just starting. It's a really great pleasure to welcome Eric back. And Eric, if you can turn on your camera and microphone, then we can get started with your session.
Jan, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you perfectly. Welcome back, Eric.
Thank you, Jan. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric, and it is my pleasure to share a thing or two around data, the use of data, in the context of post-COVID recovery with you today. This session, I hope that we can have some sort of like interactive session rather than myself talk about things that I prepare and believe. I'd like you to participate as much as you can by dropping me questions, and then we will discuss about this point, because at the end of the day, I want to share what I've learned as well as I want to learn from you. Thank you. And okay, so for this topic today, I want to basically go through a number of things, but maybe we keep it simple as 1, 2, 3. One, it is about why we talk about post-COVID recovery in the context of big data, especially in this big data framework event like today. Two things. It is about two stories I think is quite interesting around data and the role of context as well as people that make data stories become some successful, and you can learn from it. And last but not least, is about 3 things that you can try for free. It is like a couple of techniques that you can walk away today and try it out immediately. All right, so that is the agenda of today's session. I will go to the first, the starting point. We are now in 2022. Back in 2019, if anyone tell you that the world at some point will stop, everyone would stay home, no one believed in it. And even myself, I would consider myself somehow was very lucky, because I touched down to Australia after a month on holidays in Europe. I touched down to Australia on the 1st of January 2020, and right after that, fast forward until now, we are in the COVID, we are in the pandemic. So things change, and so do we. So now what you see on the screen, it looked very busy, but cut to the chase. So just one story that I want to share around data, around decision making, and actually about us, human society, modern society. So the story is very simple. In Australia, last weekend we had the federal election, and it was right in the middle of the pandemic. We call it middle, or at the end, we hope. So as you can see, we got COVID, we got an election, and I followed the election, but this time with some sort of like curiosity, because a couple of factors I have to call it out. As you can see on the screen, on the left-hand side, that it was the election date back in last Saturday, and on from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. it was where you see that people will vote for the candidate. So the way I see it was, okay, so we start from 8, we finish by 6. It means we have a few hours into the counting process, and then we should have the outcome at some point when things clear. It's like 1 + 1 is 2. You need the number, you need the hard fact to say, okay, this candidate collect enough vote to become the next prime minister. But to my surprise, as you can see in the middle, it was the live broadcast from a TV commentator. And they basically, they just access to the same data as everyone else. It was from the election, the Central Election Committee. They broadcast live data. And then to my surprise, they keep saying that they can see the vote casting for party, for candidate, but at the back of it, you can see that actually the number of vote count, you never see it over 50%. It was around 30%, 40% max, because it was in like very short period of time. And then by 10:45 p.m., the former prime minister, he accepted the verdict from the people. And at that point, I was like very surprised, because I think, hang on, things happen in parallel. Why would you make a decision when you do not have the core hard fact? And fast forward, I Google, and I realized that even the Australian Electoral Commission on their website, they made this announcement. So it means a few more weeks, we will have the final official result in mid of June. But then but technically we had a new prime minister before the official result was going to be released. So we have the new prime minister in just a matter of few hours, when the data is still being processed and the result has been still changed and is still in the making. So it's really aligned with the theme that we have for this session. It is all about the using of the data to make decisions. In real life, would it all be data-driven decision? Think about a political party. Every election was a big deal for them. So how could they commit to make a call based on certain level of data that's still collecting? Think about it. From that story of how we people in modern society use data to make a decision, I'd like to just briefly share with you some of the observation around change that is coming, and why it set the scene for a couple of talking points I will share later on around what we can do post-COVID for the recovery. The first key change, it was around capital, access to capital, cheap money of low interest rate. As you can see on the screen, so basically everyone everywhere from Asia to the US to Europe, even to Australia, we no longer have access to easy money or cheap money, especially during the COVID time. Secondly, it was around the story of inflation, the story of fuel. This is keep increasing. The story of operating expense to the point that a lot of business will not make it through the next financial year, just because, not because of COVID, but because of the cost. They simply cannot have enough money to operate. Last but not least, it is more close to our domain here. Today was around data. I would say the regulator and legislator are playing catch up. What does it mean? It means Gone the day that you can harvest data. You can harvest data and trade data without any consequence. Personalized and targeted services at scale is no longer an easy option for any business. And last but not least, existing online revenue stream going to be different. Think about the big player like in the ad space, like for example, I think the significant one would be Facebook. As soon as Apple declined them to track user, their revenue never come back to maybe just the last 12 months ago. But on the other hand, the governance and compliance of data will bring up the clarity of accountability for business as well as the any third parties. The data sharing, I would say, is going to be elevated to the next level, where we say it's going to be trusted, it's going to be properly controlled, so that we can really embrace the digital economy. And last but not least, it would be around the building long-term trust between the reality, the physical life that we are now, and the virtual world that we embrace. Some people refer it to the Web3, but I think it's still too early. But without building long-term trust, Web3 is just a term on paper. Okay, so that was the setting of the need for change. So for me, when I think about that sort of like change and the dynamic in today's right now for us, and when we think for like say the next 12 months to 18 months, I went through some conversation with people from the leadership as well as from clients perspective. I think the main concerns is going to be shifting around from innovation from survival to get the basic right for the next foreseeable future, probably 12 to 18 months. Right. So what do I mean with the term get the basics right with data? On the left hand side, it was from Gartner. They produced this roadmap for the COVID response back in 2020. So it was right at the time of the pandemic, and now you can see we are in the middle of that journey, the recovery phase, and you can see this time is going to be very turbulent. And on top of that, as I mentioned, the three key change on the horizon around interest rate, around cost, around inflation, and regulation, or more constraint around data. Definitely the one thing that I can think of, and I think this is something that you can also think and make the conversation within your organization. It was around the operational efficiency. I would say arguably is going to be the go-to strategy for the next 12 months. It would mean around we're going to focus on reducing the waste of resource, transparency and flexibility in terms of cost and investment. And last but not least, it wasn't going to be about performance to drive the outcome, not just making ourselves busy. Okay, so now we have the big theme around operational efficiency. I translate it into a very simple idea: make your data impactful. Because for sure, if you want to improve operation at organizational scale or even team scale, it is a team effort. It's not one man show. So I guess I would say data can help you to do so. Let's see how we go. In order to drive that sort of like a narrative around make your data impactful, let's just bring up the story around mask for COVID. On the right hand side, I think it was a beautiful illustration of our journey around accepting that mask is part of our individual kind of like protection as well as the community protection towards the COVID pandemic. And you can, if you see on in terms of the timing, it was very interesting that you can see a lot of countries actually adopt that practice way before the expert, the so-called expert, or we will always rely on whether it's the WHO or whether it would be country from the West. Surprisingly, country from the East in Asia, in ASEAN in particular, they are very proactive in this space. They say, okay, let's try anything we can, including using mask. So as you can see, at the early day, no one really had enough data or sufficient data, or to the part that they say they have the confidence that it's going to be a data-driven approach. So how did those country and leaders make up their mind and commit to it? I would say it would come down to three parts. Number one, it was around data, available and accessible data. In countries like China, Vietnam, Hong Kong, over the past 20 years, we got a fair bit of experience with pandemic, especially for things like SARS or, like say, a number of others, seasonal flu. So we have access to different type of data, not just the data around COVID itself. And then secondly, it's around the contextual landscape. There's a layer of social, historical, and behavioral context. For countries like, say, in America, you would not ask people to do things. They will do as they see fit. That was the behavior. Compared to places like maybe Vietnam, we tend to blend in with the community. And last but not least, it would be around the actionable insights. As you can see, the graph here actually show you the number of steps that the Canadian authorities had commit in order to come down to mandatory of mask. So they start with the recommendation, and then they make it optional, and then mandatory. So as you can see, it is actionable insight. It's not just recommendation. Now from the drive insight to action, this slide is just all, I want to highlight one thing around data. We think data as a black box, something magical that will tell you where to go. But actually, if you unfold it and you see it from perspective of the decision maker, there are two common approach: evidence-based and risk-based approach. If you start thinking about the decision maker perspective, I think it will be easier for you to influence them as well as others, because you already done the hard work for them. This slide, I hope that you will be able to pick something that relevant to your everyday's work and your organization. I put together some key elements around data as well as operation, because my background was all around, about operation in the context of telecom, in customer service, in terms of bringing technology into clients' side. And that's why I can share with you some of my observation. I think it's pretty much from the ground. We always say that we always seem to think that there was a straight kind of like journey from data straight to action. Oh no, decision. We always we see a lot of conversation and also publication around data to decision. But for me, someone who work in the customer space, I know that decision mean nothing to a client. It is no good. Actions speak louder. The outcome meaningful. That's why I put together this. And in a nutshell, the part that I think is hidden away from most of us. When we talk about data, it was around context, organizational context. It was around something similar to what I mentioned earlier around, like say in a for a country, the context could be like historical or like behavior, or like say the landscape. So basically, if you have data and you're blending with the organizational context, then you will have information and insight. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of data that no one really understand what does it mean to the audience. Similarly, we have between data and process. I think the connection would be context. For process and context, you will have business practice. This is how things done at certain organization because of like A, B, C, and D. The same thing with technology. We have something I call it fit for purpose solution. So rather than go out and buy tool set, technology, or even like say embrace digital transformation for the sake of keeping up with the market, it would be around fit for purpose solution, the solution for today, tomorrow, and for the future. But it has to come in and lie with the organizational context. So we see here, so basically data have to blend in with context and then merge into the part around process, the business practice, as well as part of the fit for purpose solution. Before we move to the next stage where we have people. People we see here is not just about data literacy, but also I see from an operational perspective, I call it business capabilities. So your people not only can understand and question data and make use of the data and the all the technology and the business practice, but also these people can share it and break it down to the area of focus or the domain of expertise that it can enhance those decisions, those observations. After that thought process, then the part around decision making, compliance, governance have to be put in place, and it is again under people. We're not talking about a title, job title. We're talking about real people, real decision making process, real consequence. So as you say here, that's why in the end, action for me with data, from data to action, it is actually a combination of multiple layers of interaction. And in at the end, we have the outcome, and then outcome will come with feedback. Feedback not just go back to data in the form of, let's say, apps feedback or email or any survey that we send out to client, but also the feedback comes straight to people, people from the front line, people at the very top when they talk to their potential client or even their client. So this is like two channel feedback go back to data. So that is the in the end, it is a team effort to drive data insight to action. It is not just a straightforward process to bring data into a report, a field of report or dashboard, and then move on to some execution plan, and magically something happens. Right. So I think it is a heavy part of a little bit of theory. Now, I'll share with you a story around a good story of using data that really align with the theme today, using data for post-COVID recovery. QR code. I would say for people out of China, before the pandemic, QR code was just something trivial until we actually had to embrace the reality that it's going to be touch-free, like contactless engagement, and we have to basically declare check-in wherever we go at the early day. I think the story around QR code was just quite fascinating. From a technology perspective, it was 1994, so it was even before the internet, the .com 2000, the year 2000. So 1994. Fast forward until probably around 10 years. No, yeah, about 20 years. 2014, when in China they start embrace the trivial idea of using apps to pay with the QR code. So basically, you can see the QR code on its own is visual. It is trivial, but actually it contains certain type of data. If you look closely for payment, it would just around, okay, you pay for this item. And then when we have to check in for during the pandemic, the data now is around who are you, where you check in, at what time, with what location, how long you stay there for. And bring together, it become your journey map so that people will, the authority can carry out the contact tracing. So it's about drive action compared to the early day of keep it simple, stupid, like for the payment. But last but not least, fast forward after year 2000, now 2022, as you can see, even myself, I was surprised that I see QR code everywhere from restaurant where I will basically pull out a phone and order and pay right from my table. Or for things like voting in France, or even like KitKat, they have QR code for your entertainment. So it is about, I think it is about value co-creation. The data now in the QR code is no longer just serving the purpose of maybe 20 years ago. It was now purely around the interaction, and people from various part of business can contribute to the outcome. So that is the story. I think is quite resonate in terms of using data. Okay, so from the big idea of operational efficiency to the theme of driving data insight to action. Now, I will share with you three things that you can try out, or what we use to call is the how-to, and it's free, by the way. First of all, we talk about problem solving. So many times when I talk to people, when I have a new project or talking to clients, people jump straight into the questions. What is your problem? Tell me your problem statement. And then from the other end, there was a real struggle to encapsulate what is the problem. We will have a lot of description. We will have a lot of fact. We will have a lot of key point. And then at the end, we have a but. And then something will basically make it almost like impossible. So I stumbled across this framework. It is called Ngyen. It is in Welsh, so the way you see it and the way you pronounce it is different. But the idea of this framework, I think, is quite practical for all of us to think about the problem pattern when we communicate, when we try to influence, when we try to explore option. This type of framework will help us to reach out to the audience. The framework is about you live in a reality where you have predictable order, kind of like set of problem, and then you will have organic, unpredictable issue, and then above all you have disorder. It was the disorder. I would say it would be the COVID situation, the COVID pandemic, where basically you have to brace for crash landing. That was why the lockdown happened. Everyone was not everyone convinced that it was the right decision, but from the decision maker position, actually, as I browse through some article, actually places like in the US and the UK, they use this framework as part of their tool set to come to the conclusion that they need to go through and embrace the lockdown. It was literally like never before in those countries. But anything below disorder, we will have, let's say, on the right hand side, we have order. And then on the left, we have unpredictable. I'll briefly walk you through it, and then you can have a look in later on in details. We start from the right-hand side corner. It was around simple. Basically, you as soon as you have the right material, the right training, you can do it. You learn it by doing it. And then moving up, we have complicated situation where you actually have to rely on expert judgment and planning. So like you call in help from vendors, from a consultant, or maybe your peer. And then when you move to the left-hand side, the top corner, it was the complex situation where things now just like emerge in terms of pattern, and you have to experiment your response before you decide the next move. And last but not least, it would be around chaotic as in the situation was unclear and this is changed on the daily basis. I think perfectly example was around, like say, the COVID time. After the post-COVID lockdown, when we start to reopen it across the world, we will see the same story. As soon as we ease the restriction, we got the COVID situation. We got the rise in hospitalization. We got a rise in the number of people who got test positive. It was chaotic, but out of it, we will see that, as you can see, why this is important. I have to emphasize, because so easy that we jump into the conclusion. We say that, okay, we have a problem. People say they need help. We say, okay, what is your current state? What is your future state? As if everything was either simple or at a complicated stage. But in reality, you have complex interdependence, and also you have chaotic situation. So this way of thinking really frame all stakeholders into the situation where they say, okay, what we can do with what we have right now. And on the right-hand side, this step basically just show you how you can use and collect data. It was limited, but it will help. This is one example of in real life how in the US they use the framework to basically put down some action and strategy for the COVID-19 response. Okay, so the second thing that you can try out, apart from number one, about identify problem, the second option that you can try out was around empowerment of your people with data in the form of hackathon. Hackathon, in another word, just around you gather people together, break down the silo, emphasize on the fun and engaging and interactive between people. And then within, like say, 48 hours or so, this team will come up with solution, with a prototype, and then you will be the judge. Why do we see hackathon as a good way to use data? Because it's very simple. Two things. Number one, people really know how the organization work and what is like for them. They have pain point, and when you align those pain point with what else others can help, you potentially you can have some way to improve it. Small, big, it doesn't matter. The main thing was around the way forward. And hackathon, in the end, it was so fun. People love it. You can do it over and over again. It opened up the new dimension for people when they consider they will stay with the company, the organization. Last but not least, this is something I think it is from the bigger picture. It was around the rotation of people with data skill, like data analysts, in a short period of time. The whole idea here is very simple, and actually it was from my own experience. I during my time at Telstra, at some point, I got direct access to the GM level, and here's this international. Why? Because I can give them the data and the information and the insight and also recommendation literally on the spot. How? Because I was on the ground with the team, and I was curious, so I observed certain things. I took notice, data point, the meaning, the impact. So when things just at one point at a meeting, a GM got stuck with a question that relate to data. I just ping him right in that session, and so after that experience, I was part of their meeting. So I think I speak it from that experience. If you start bring in people with data skill embedded to the operation space, two things can happen. One, the people with data skill can solve a lot and can observe and help immediately. And secondly, the people around work with that data analyst, even in a short period of time, they can see that, okay, this is something useful, I can try. And also that you build up that couple of relationship between people. That is a great way to to build up the trust and also gain the efficiency. So that was the end of the talk that I want to share with you today around a few things. The winter is coming. We know this is like post-COVID recovery. This is not easy, but actually now it just got real with interest rate, with costs, the rise of the inflation, and also data governance and compliance change. Secondly, the operational efficiency, it was the theme that you can do for your organization to deal with those change from the outer, as well as to navigate through this this stage of recovery before you heading to fully recover and reinvent the business. That it was the what, and then the how. It would be around make your data impactful, drive insight to action. The most important part is action. It is not decision. You can make a wrong decision and correct it, but you cannot delay to action, to act. And the three things that you can try out for free was around finding the problem, understand the problem before you think of the solution via the Nguyen framework. Secondly, you should try to build, embrace the culture of using data via hackathon or rotation of people with data skill into the organization. And that's all for me. Thank you everyone for your time. It is the question Q&A. Over to you.
Thanks. Well, first of all, Eric, let me thank you again for a very insightful presentation. I've been fascinated basically from beginning to end. And I always think you have such a great way of explaining quite difficult concepts in very easy kind of terms. We have still around 5 minutes to moderate some questions. I've already seen some questions coming in. So if you have questions for Eric, please use the Q&A functionality on the right-hand side, and I will moderate the questions in the on order that they come in. I'm going to get started with a question that came in around at the start of your presentation already, and that is, what do you mean that data harvesting is a con from the regulators? I think that's something you mentioned around at the start of your presentation, right?
Yes, that's right. And I show up for you with you this our mobile phone data harvesting. It was all around. Like I said, when you go to any website nowadays, you will see the a pop-up around cookies, around tracking data. That was a form of data harvesting. Basically, someone observe you all the way, all of the time you interact with any element on screen, whether it is on on your phone, when you drive the car. All of these interaction documented, and then harvest, and then without your permission and without even your imagination, where they end up to. Back in the US election, I think in 2020, the Facebook issue with data harvesting was one example. Cambridge Dana, sorry, also I forgot the name, but the idea was around your data was somehow harvested and someone will circulate it into a use that you never understand and permit. So this was part of why I say it is not a good thing. I just speak in a very simple term. Think about this: the all the unicorn in let's say in the tech world. You talk about Facebook, or in Asia, you talk about those super apps like say WeChat or TikTok. Why people value them in the hundred of billions US dollar? It was because it was so easy to make money when they can harvest that amount of data and turn it into commodity for targeting ads, for like say offering you service that you don't even know. So that is why I think it is from investment perspective, or even us in the tech space, we say, oh, now this is shifting where we have to play by the rules. So that is why I say the change. It doesn't mean this is good or bad, but it is the change, and we have to embrace the law. Maybe 10 years ago it was illegal. Now it is illegal.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that you're making there, and also clearly, I would say from an ethical perspective, and that's a whole different subject that we can probably talk about for a few more hours. Is going to be one of the main challenges that we're going to be facing with using those massive amount of data. I have another question for you, which is kind of a completely different topic, but I kind of want to go into that anyway, which is a question that's coming in from Steve. And Steve is asking how to start a hackathon in an organization.
That is a great question. If you on your own, you will basically find this very challenging. My advice is, well, why don't you try and share it with the group, the teams, or the organization. Make it like say a fun event to start with, so that you can gain the buy-in, the interest, and also the sponsorship. Secondly, about the actual types, like say selecting the theme, finding the right people, you'll be surprised. Trust me, you will be surprised with the number of help you can get from your own crowd.
No
Sorry,
worries.
some interruption. Yeah, so for me, it was a in another word, hackathon in organization. It was a team effort. It was about culture. It was about something that everyone chip in. So don't worry too much about what is it like. How do I do it? 101 step. Think about the people. You build the trust. You generate the interest. You'll be fine.
Good. That's a very good answer to that. I always have the pleasure sitting as the host to also ask a question. And one of the things that I found very strong in the presentation was your more practical application of the Sinefin framework. A lot of people find that a very difficult framework to apply in practice. So, just out of curiosity from my side, have you seen applications of this framework in a more practical concept or in a more practical context?
Yes, I do. And actually, it would be in the military. In the military, you will see you will not have a procedure for every situation in the battlefield. And then why I give you this answer was because it was from my own experience with a former counterintelligence officer of the Australian Army. And that guy, he always talk about things that I think, hell, this sounds crazy.
I didn't know you were in
He
the
talk about
service.
strategy. And he talk about you have three phases. You start, you move in, and you have to transition out, and you have to brace for impact. It's like what do you mean? But actually, when I align with the Univin framework, the disorder stage was literally around brace for impact, and from military perspective, it was around survival.
Okay.
When you see that the like say there's like a bomb or like say a grenade throw at you, what do? You think, or you jump, you lie down, you minimize the impact. So that's for survival. You might get injured, but not the point. It is about survival. And then we when we moved down to like say things about like say chaotic or around complex. It was part of the decision making that embedded into their routine. It was around, do I have the support? If I don't have the support, I'm alone, I'm in trouble. That is the chaotic part. If I have some support, okay, it is like a little bit complicated, but I think that I still have a good chance. So you see, it sometimes we think that those framework is around problem solving is out of touch, but I guess the part around people, around story, actually elaborated. It was part of our daily life without the framework label attached to it.
Perfect. Yeah, so that's an application I never thought about earlier. So that's a really good answer to that question. I was thinking that I was the last question, but I see one other question coming in, and we still have 2 or 3 minutes. So please keep it a little bit brief and concise for this last one.
Sure.
But the question is, while big data is getting attention, what about data governance? What's your thoughts on that?
I would say data governance is now at the front and center of every organization, as well as the authorities, in two ways. One is about cybersecurity. Everywhere you go, you will see that word, cybersecurity. It was all around that data governance, the control. And secondly, it would be around the opportunity of data governance. Data governance, it could be around data sharing. It could be around monetizing data. So it was big opportunity on the horizon. So yeah, don't think about governance in the negative term. It was opportunity as well as support from the community.
Good. Thank you so much, Eric, for that. That's a really insightful overview. I see some more questions rolling in, but unfortunately, we do really need to kind of stop the session right here because we already have our next speakers waiting. And in approximately 10 minutes from now, we have 2 new sessions. So as you're familiar by now, every hour you need to choose between 2 experts. So unfortunately, you need to make a choice. And for the next hour, I know it's a difficult decision, but you can always watch back the recording of the other session. So in this track, I'm going to have the great pleasure to introduce to you Jean-Michel Keur, who is the head of data analytics practice at Source Group. And he's going to be talking around data strategy and especially where to start. So if you're interested in that session, just stay tuned because that's going to be happening within this particular track. On the other track, the more technical track, we're going to be looking at an introduction and demo of machine learning using Amazon SageMaker. So that's a technical track by Paul Colmer, whom I've known for many years, and that gives really good in-depth overviews on how do you use new technology to come up with results very quickly. So if you're interested in that session, highly recommend that you will go towards the technical track. I would like again to thank Eric for his excellent presentation. It's always a pleasure to have you at these events now for the second year in a row. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom, and I hope I can see you again on any of our upcoming events. Thank you, Eric.